Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar about trends in monetization for 2022. In this webinar, we're going to be talking about what's coming up for mobile game monetization in the next year. We're going to be looking at some really interesting and exciting stuff. I have a special guest I'm going to introduce in just a second. Let me introduce myself first and a little bit about Yoda One, as well as how we're going to do this webinar. My name is Luke Pretty. I'm the head of education at Yoda One. Yoda One, you may know as a publisher. We started publishing games back in 2011, and over that period of time, with over 1 billion players globally, we learned how to monetize their games and make money with them. So then in 2019, we started creating tools for developers to use to monetize their own games, one of which is called MAS, Managed Ad Services. And that platform is helping thousands of developers around the world make more money with ads in their games. Now, for the webinar today, if you have questions, ask them. We're going to get to some questions later on, some of your questions later on, and also throughout. If you have questions in the chat, someone is in the chat to answer your questions. So questions are a good thing. Now, my guest for today, an expert. Could I say an expert? An expert in the area. His name is Alex Olthoff. He is the MAS product manager. I mentioned Managed Ad Services. He's the product manager of that. So he really has a great bird's eye view of this stuff. He works with many developers and really can see the landscape quite well. So I think it's going to be very interesting and very insightful. Do you agree, Alex? Is it going to be interesting and insightful?
I sure do, Luke. And I've been keeping a straight face. So if I weren't an expert, we might be in trouble.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. If you weren't an expert, where would we go? Who would we turn to? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
I
great
think
to be
expert is
here.
fair.
Yeah, it's great to be here. And indeed, expertise is interesting, Luke. It's always a journey, but it's important to recognize where that journey is going to take you, right? And how to make the most of it. And that's what we're here for today. So very excited for that.
Right, because the landscape is always changing. The trends are always changing. So if you get stuck in any mindset and say, this is my thing, like as a developer, this is what works. For example, banner ads are what I do. And that's, I'm not saying anything about banner ads. You can maybe give some advice on that. But to be open, to know when you need to change your strategy, because it's a very rapidly changing area.
Sure is. It sure is. Yeah.
Alex, with your background and your vantage point, could you just talk a little bit about, just as a product manager for a monetization product, what kind of stuff do you get to see that maybe the rest of us don't get to see?
Yeah, sure thing. So first of all, I love to see the nuts and bolts of MAS. Like I get to, be like a car mechanic, open it up and, look inside, get some idea. Okay, that's working. Better tweak that, make that work better. And I mean, it's a cool thing for me. I love puzzles. I love challenges. But actually, it's not something that I think the average person really wants to see. It's messy.
Right.
And by messy, I mean there's a lot to work with. So that's one thing. More broadly, I also get to see and check out what's going on all over the market. So, I have the blessing of this responsibility of awareness, and that comes with knowing, for example, what are the new trends in monetization. I was just at Pocket Gamer Connects, the conference all week, checking out the new monetization trends and some of the new technological trends that are happening in gaming. And these kind of events, they give me a very broad awareness of what developers can think about and consider, which honestly, Luke, is overwhelming for most developers, I think. But it's cool to be able to spend time learning about that and keeping that in mind for our own customers and also broadly for the market. So yeah, those are a couple things that I really get to see.
Well, that's cool, and hopefully today you'll be able to sort of condense some of that down into some useful gems for us.
Mhm.
That would be great. No pressure. Uh,
None felt at all, Luke. None at all.
all I'm asking for are gems. Yeah, so maybe we can start with just a little bit of before we get into the major trends, the stuff that's to you obvious that people tend to miss, right? Because the vantage point is you're looking at a very large landscape. You're going to these events and conferences and you're looking under the hood. Most people are just working on their own game and they have that little perspective, which is fine. But where do a lot of people go wrong? What are some of the most common mistakes or landmines people step on that they could avoid very easily?
Mm, mm. So if it were a few years ago, I might have a different answer for you. So I want to circle back to that idea here in a moment.
Sure.
But I think the biggest landmines that people follow today is they think about their game and they expect it to do well uh, by virtue of it being out there or by virtue of it being what they think is good or what their mom said is good or what the brother said is good.
Right.
And then the rookie mistake, once you've got that, is to put a bunch of ads in it and say, I'm just going to put this out there into the world, right? Not that you shouldn't have ads or
Sort of
I
move on then from that, like you clean your hands of it and then move on to the next thing. It's done.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. And the other thing would be swinging in the opposite direction too far and spending quite a bit of your energy and resources on little optimizations. Let's say you're using some mediation out there and you're playing with your waterfalls to see what's the exact best floor price that I can set, and then what ad network should I put on top, or how many ads should I put in this game? I don't know, and I'm going to figure it out all by myself. Kind of taking the lone ranger path of solving everything on your own. These are two major extremes, and they both have their faults. Both of these are two extremes that you need to watch out for as a developer. At the end of the day, you want something in the middle where you are kind of watching your game, you're thinking about how to make it the best that it can be, while at the same time you have a reliable monetization partner that you can, as much as possible, hand over the process of monetization to them, so that you're not that tweaker playing with the waterfalls, but you're also not that guy who just says, this is not my problem anymore. This game is great. It needs no attention,
Right.
and it's ready to go. Yeah.
So thinking of yourself as a business owner rather than just a creative, which it's a unique thing because you are a creative.
Mhm.
Maybe you do what you like, but also as a business owner, well, if you have your shop front, you go out in the morning and you sweep it, right? So you got to maintain it and listen to the players and think about monetization and maybe A/B test the
Right.
frequency of interstitials and you test some things out.
Yeah.
But 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 don't think that means you have to own every aspect of it. You can outsource,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Well, Alex, maybe we can actually get into some of this trend stuff because you mentioned you went to Pocket Gamer. I mean, you have
Yeah.
your finger on the pulse pretty much
Mhm.
all the time. So, going into 2022, number one, will ads still be a good way to
Mhm.
make revenue? And then, are there any other trends that you're seeing related to monetization in general, monetization in ads, that people need to look out for and maybe they can get ahead of the game and implement some of
Mhm.
those things?
Yeah. No, Luca, it's a really good question. So I want to start
Thank
with
you.
the two concepts. I want to start with two
So it's
concepts.
literally all I'm here for. You
Fair
have to be
enough.
the expert, and I have to have good questions. This is
That's
how it
true.
works.
That's true. Very true. So there are two ideas you want to hold in your head as a game developer. And by the way, full disclosure, I say this because I am a game developer now. I've been working on my own games for a bit now, and hoping to release my first one this weekend. So I'm also going through the process of eating my own dog food, as we say, and using math to understand this better as well from that vantage point. But I talk to developers every day. I have a good idea of their expectations as well. And I can tell you there's a common pattern you see, right, with these new trends. So this is an important concept. There are bread and butter, right? And everybody likes bread and butter. It keeps us fed, it keeps us healthy, it keeps us, well, I don't know about healthy, but it keeps us full, right? And that's important. Right? So your bread and butter, that you should never lose sight of. And Luke, for the next 5 years, ads are going to be bread and butter. Last year, ads surpassed IAP. So they surpassed in-app purchases in hyper casual as the best way for developers to monetize. And that was last year. So that means we have quite a few years for this to play out, right? And I want to start with that. But then you also have, your tasty pizza, and pizza also gets you full.
Bread
But
and pizza. A lot of carbs in this diet.
a lot of carbs. I'm in Azerbaijan these days, Luke. So it's bread capital of the world, this region. Anyway, um, uh, what can I say about pizza? It's tasty. It looks good, but
It's
it's a
so
bit
good.
more. It's a bit more expensive, and because some people make it poorly, sometimes it's not that great, right? So it's a
Yep.
bit of a distraction. Um, Now, to further this, it's really important that we, holding on to these two concepts, we look at all trends through this lens. Ads are the bread and butter, but some new things that are coming down the pike that developers might want to cautiously experiment with if they have a really solid game that is monetizing well with ads. Things, for example, like subscriptions. Those have been an interesting trend for developers, being able to add a subscription into your game and then players pay you recurring revenue. That's always a great business model if you can make it work, right? So far, it's been a very hit or miss. Another would be playing around with NFTs, although I would strongly discourage. This is one of those pizzas that can come out very bad because it's complicated, it's uncharted, and it's a lot of hype. Saturday Night Live did a big video on it. It was very funny, but when Saturday Night Live parodies something, you got to ask yourself, is it really the best thing to be looking at right now? Yeah, so cool space, very early to know if it's worth investing your time in. Play to win as a concept as well. The idea that your players get paid. Sorry, not play to win. Pay to earn. Play to earn.
Play to
Play to
earn.
earn.
Oh, I like
Yeah,
play to
play
win.
to earn.
Play to win. Play to win is
That's
that's
an
what
old
everybody's doing, right?
That's an old thing. No.
Play to lose.
Uh,
Play
um,
play to
play to
earn.
earn.
Okay.
Yes, play to
Yeah.
earn is a new trend as well. Also very interesting. You reward your players and they reward you back. Not necessarily, again, for the average developer who doesn't have a lot of time on their hands and doesn't have that steady flow of bread and butter. But
Right.
interesting, right? And finally, Luke, the other thing people are talking about, I was in a webinar a few weeks ago about this, is this idea of non-intrusive ads
Is that
as
like
a
product placement, like that kind of thing?
it often is. So you've got your Nike shoes, and then suddenly you're playing your game. Maybe you were looking up Nike shoes on Amazon a few minutes ago, or Alibaba, or whatever your e-commerce platform is, and then bam, suddenly on the side of a wall in the game, there's those Nike shoes, right?
Right.
Now, here's the thing. I just gave you a very interesting example where they were able to pick up the data that you left on your e-commerce platform and show it to you in the game. The reality is that unlike traditional ads, Non-intrusive ads have not figured out how to do that yet, which means that even though it looks really good and sounds really good for the player, for the developer, there's still a lot of risk without as much reward when we talk about the ultimate currency of life, which is time, right? You put that time into adding these non-intrusive ads, and then maybe you don't even get paid that much. So again, these are all things to keep your eye on. But like I said, you got to focus on that bread and butter, which is these days going to be your standard ads. Yeah.
So if I were to sort of just summarize that, then it's more like a company has its main revenue streams, and then it also has an R&D department. So
Yeah.
you kind of in your head need to have an R&D department where you're testing things, you're looking around. You can, maybe I'll try these. Oh, NFTs, I might try that if I have extra time. But make sure your foundation is in place. Your revenue
Yeah.
streams are in place.
You know, Luke, if I may, there's actually here at Yodel One, we have this experience firsthand, right? We made ourselves our bread and butter 8, 9 years ago when we started publishing, and that's worked great for us. Now, after that period of time, we said to ourselves back a little before 2019, if I remember correctly, let's launch our R&D effort. And from that, we were able to grow and build mass, and it's been a huge success. But there's a lesson in that.
Right.
We invested our time and energy into the thing that we knew would bring us the revenue first. And I would say for all developers, you have to keep that in mind, right?
Right.
I think that statistically it takes an average of 10 years to grow a great company. So, you know, a great game might not take that long. It might take a lot less time, but it's still, you need to focus on that first and then expand.
All right. So now what if maybe we can make this a little bit more specific? Like bring it into a specific example, like a case study. We're going to get to some questions. For those asking questions, we are going to get to them. But I wanted to ask, you know, if you were, and actually you said you are you're doing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're launching your own game.
Mm-hmm.
You're considering the best practices, the future trends, all that stuff. So how do you actually construct a solid ad monetization strategy?
Mm-hmm. So I'll cycle back to what I said in the beginning, right? And you mentioned mass. So I think it's okay to be totally open. I'm the mass product manager. I love mass. My point here is you need to pick a good partner.
You're the expert.
Well, yeah, I endeavor to be, Luke. And like I said, we'd be in trouble if I weren't. But, you know, the key thing here is you need to have a good partner, right? And I believe mass is a fantastic partner. So that's your starting place. And why I say that's your starting place is because then the burden of the you know this old saying, it takes the most energy to get going, right? And the first step is just to get going. And once you have
first step is the hardest, I think, is the expression, right?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, so the first step is the hardest, right? And if you've got a good partner, then that step will be easier to take. Once that's out of the way, then you need to think about, and this is what I'm thinking about right now, what are your expectations and how are you going to know if you've met them? So your expectations might be, you know, something like, oh, I'm going to have great revenue. Okay. Well, then how do you know you're going to have great revenue? Quantify it. And then here's the thing. You might not meet those expectations when you first do it. So you'll have to ask yourself why you didn't. So for example, I'm launching a shooter and you're set on the top of a hill and you're shooting zombies and saving people. And I'm expecting to put a couple of different ad formats in that game and see how they go. And I'm predicting my revenue to be somewhere around $20 in the first week, right? Because it's my first game ever. I have no experience. There's a lot of help I'm going to be getting eventually for this, but in the beginning, it's just a soft test. If I don't get $20, then I need to ask myself why, right? And I
Right.
need to look at carefully what
So
were
you
the
have
things.
benchmarks, basically. You need enough
Exactly.
benchmarks. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And you need to ask yourself what didn't go well. And you need to use a little bit of data. So we talked before about that, right? Not too much, but enough data to at least say, okay, how many users did I have? How many ads did they watch? Which ads were most interesting to them? You know, how often they come back over the days. And then from there, with all that information, go back in the game and make a few changes. And then again, launch it again with another period of time, well defined. For me, it's a week, right? And say, I want to do this by the end of this week. And you just got to keep doing that over and over again.
Hmm.
As you do that more and more, you will learn little things that you can improve in your game. And at some point, you might want to reach out for some support, right? You might want to have a partner that can help you with knowing how to improve the App Store ranking, because maybe it has nothing to do with your game. Maybe it's a great game, but then it doesn't end up getting downloaded. So you need some help on that, right? I love, by the way, our ASO course. I watched it with my girlfriend and her brother. The three
With
of us are
popcorn?
making what?
With popcorn?
With popcorn? No, with baklava. That's what
Wow,
we've got here with starting.
baklava goes very well with ASO, in my opinion.
Oh, it went fantastically, and and so we have that as a point of reference now. But yeah, that's the process loop that I plan to take, and
That's
I think
great. I
it's
mean, I
really.
like the idea of having the benchmark and
Mhm.
allowing for the creative process to happen, having realistic expectations and consistently measuring against those expectations and using the resources available to you with a partner or something like Maz to get advice and get tips and to use experience when you can get it.
Right.
So for Maz specifically, for Maz itself, so you're involved in all aspects of it. What are some of those things, maybe specifically in the dashboard, that people
Mm.
can take advantage of if they're using Maz to start doing those things, right? To start actually looking at their metrics. What are some of those key things that Maz uniquely offers?
Yeah. So let me start by saying, Luke, it's going to depend a lot on where the developer is coming from. But I want to talk to developers who are in a similar situation to the one I just described. Or maybe they've had a game for a while and they're looking to revitalize that.
Okay.
Those types of developers, what should they look at? The first thing is when you first get in there, you need to look at your DAU, right? Which we offer right on the main page. We just did a redesign. That page is called the overview page. When you get there, you'll see your top level metrics and you'll want to look at DAU. That's going to tell you how many players you have on a daily basis.
Hmm.
If your DAU is low, then you've got a growth problem, meaning you're not getting enough players to play and you probably need to increase that. Of course, you might want to look over a week's period of time and see, has my DAU been higher during this week and it's just today is a weird day, right? Or has it been consistently low? And of course, you can cross-reference that with your downloads, which you can find in your App Store, Google Play Store console. Okay, that's the first thing. If
Yeah.
that's a relatively high, like 1,000 plus, then that might not be your main focus. Instead, you're going to want to turn your attention to something like your retention. For that, you would go into your games page and the games managed page inside of the Mass portal, and you'll look there and you'll see on the third tab over is some game metrics. There you'll see a chart with your retention. How
Very cool.
many players are coming back day on day to play your game? Is the percentage like 40% on day one, and then on day two it's 10 or 5%? Then you know, okay, there's something really wrong. Either your game's too simple and people are finishing it really quick. We actually developed another game. We never launched it, but we realized the game people would stop playing it because they'd finish it, and then be like, why should I come back, right?
Right,
So you might
right.
want to tweak your game play a little bit to make it something people want to come back for. If both of these look good, then and only then do you want to look at something like ECPMs or revenue and ask yourself, is the ad type I'm using, are the ads in my games I'm using, are they good, right? Am I using the best ads? Maybe you're somebody, we just released Banner, a great new update about banners in mass. Very cool. But I will say this, if you have a choice between banners and another ad type, I still always encourage people to check out interstitials at the very least, right? Higher eCPM, right?
Right, for
But
sure. Yeah.
yeah. But if you're not getting enough players, or if your players aren't coming back after the first day, that's a more core issue. After those things, then you really want to dive into looking at your ad types and trying to measure what kind of ads are best and where are ads best. And we have features for that as well, something called ad placement that'll let you actually measure each individual ad in your game and figure out, oh, this ad is making almost no money. I should take it out. It's probably just annoying users. This ad is making a lot of money, right? Yeah, something like that. It's very granular, but I think it's useful for developers.
That is useful. Useful to know that there's something for every stage of the journey. You know,
Right.
wherever you are in your journey, there's something in using Maz. You're covered. You have all the tools that you need. And I want to get talk a little bit more about it. We're also going to get to some dev questions in a moment,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, Alex. But you mentioned the ad design recommendation, and I wanted to focus on that a little bit for a moment. That is actually something that we are offering for a limited time if you register for Maz. So if you're interested in learning more about how Maz works, if you're interested in better optimizing your ad revenue with AI driven by a team of monetization experts who have been doing this for over 10 years, register for Maz by clicking on the link in the chat, or you can scan the QR code. And if you do that within the next 7 days, you can also get a free ad design recommendation report.
Free ad design.
Yeah, a free one. Essentially, it gives you specific, unique to your game. Are you mocking me, Alex?
No, remember, I'm going live with Maz soon, so I didn't know I was going to get a free ad design.
I thought I heard sarcasm in your voice. No, it's actually very, very cool because it gives your game unique recommendations for maybe this would be a good place for interstitial, or this might not be a good place, or the greater frequency, less. I mean, we know what we're doing. We've been doing it for a long time. So check that out. Again, link in the chat or QR code within the next 7 days.
Right.
So I think we've got, is there anything else you wanted to add about Maz before we get into the questions, Alex?
Yes, Luke, I really do. I want to circle back to one thing I mentioned much earlier, right? Because this is about trends, and I think that we talked about it, but I just want to kind of finish out and talk about Mass and the broader scope of trends in 2022, right? So the important thing about Mass moving forward and about all of these other cool but kind of risky ideas that are out there right now is that you need a backbone, you need your bread and butter. And in the industry today, unlike 3 years ago, because remember I mentioned I would circle back to that, it's more important than ever that you have that backbone, that reliable partner who can take some of the burden of experimentation off of your shoulders. Now, why this is important is because if you had asked me this question in 2017, I would have said, well, you probably should spend a lot of your time investigating waterfalls and playing around with those dials and whatnot, right? And you should be making sure that you're optimizing that. And I'd say it's a prerequisite even to get into this industry to have experience in game design already be ready to jump into all that little fiddling and experimentation.
Yeah.
In 2021, going into 2022, if you're doing that still and you're working with a provider that has missed the memo that, hey, this should all be on the provider, the developer shouldn't have to worry about this anymore, you're missing a huge opportunity going to 2022. Because here's the thing, Luke. All that cool stuff I mentioned earlier that I saw in the conference, if you can get to a point where you can explore that and play with it, that's great. But you won't get there if you're spending all your time these days in a highly competitive market playing around with waterfall dials. You only get there if you can take that burden off, focus on making one or two great games that monetize well, and then opening yourself up to economically and mentally to start playing around. So I think that's a really important point to end on. And I'm very passionate about this because I see it every day, developers who are really struggling to succeed. Some of them do, some of them don't, but all of them that choose to focus their energy in this right direction stand a better chance than they might have in previous years. So
it's like freeing yourself up, giving yourself the bandwidth to do stuff that's very important, and not monetization is, but I like to sort of use the analogy of a YouTuber. A YouTuber is not thinking about like, geez, when are the ads going to show up on my videos? Or they're not thinking about, they don't even think about it. You think about creating cool stuff for your audience. And that's where it's moving more from where it was. Less manual tweaking and more like, focus on trying cool stuff, making more content for your players. And well, you don't have to be the one figuring out how to optimize your revenue on a daily basis. You can experiment with different trends and things, but on the daily grind, you don't have to do that, right?
No.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right. Well, we've got a couple questions. Alex, do you mind sticking around for a few questions? Is that okay?
Do I have a choice?
Yeah, you do. I mean, if you said no right now, I would be left in stunned silence, and we'd probably just have to call it.
Fair enough. No, Luke, I'm very happy to answer some questions. Right. That's why we have this. So
good.
We can
very nice.
Actually
Glad
talk
to hear
it.
Yeah. All right, we have some good questions here. And again, if you don't get your question answered, we'll try our best to get to all of them in the chat or the Q&A. But if for any reason we don't get your questions all answered, you're welcome to reach out to us. The link also, you can reach out to us for a call or get on a chat. We've got, if you go on the website, we've got intercom. You can click on that and ask any questions that you need. Okay, how can indie developers use non-intrusive ads at this point? So you're talking before about the idea of non-intrusive ads and experimenting it, but what would be like, I want to try it. So where would I go now if I were going to do that?
So, here's a fun little story, very quick. Our CEO is from Texas, and he's a great guy, James Lalonde. Funny enough, the Ad Inmo, one of the greatest companies that we know when it comes to non-intrusive ads, that CEO is from Texas too. So there's something in the Texas water that's driving these guys into ad tech. It's really interesting. I was talking to this guy a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about non-intrusive ads on that panel I mentioned. And what I said to him, and what I really believe is, if you want to get started with non-intrusive ads, and you're on a 2D game, then look at your 2D game. Let's say it's an adventure, right? If it's not an adventure, if it's more like a platform or whatever, look for a surface in that game that players are going to see for a couple of seconds at least. And then, for example, if you want to work with a company like Admo, sign up and integrate their SDK and put an ad in that little place on your 2D game that players will see for a little bit. Just be careful, because you want to make it central enough that it's worth the time and the effort. That's what I would say for 2D game. For a 3D game, you want to be very thoughtful about timing. 3D games often rely on, really quick action through a 3D world. And we personally tried a 3D game. We struggled to get the gameplay to be good on all devices. So the risk when you're using lots of SDKs for advertising is that you'll slow down your game's performance.
Right.
So again, I would say with that, you have to be very careful. Adamo, I believe, has a partner program. They'll work with you. But again, for that, you first need to have a good enough game with a good enough audience. So for those kinds of developers developing in 3D, really interested to make the most out of this, start with something that's going to get you that base revenue and the base users, and then go. So 2D, go for it. 3D, maybe be a little bit more careful, invest a little bit more time and energy in improving your game's performance first. Yeah.
But only after you've got your bread and butter.
You're right. You got it.
Yeah.
That's always the essentials.
Then pizza.
What else did we got, Luke?
You said Maz updated for banners, but also you don't recommend banners over others?
So, okay, let me clarify that a little bit. I have a confession, and I think, Luke, you know this, but maybe the audience doesn't. I grew up a bit spoiled for internet coverage in Washington, D.C. So,
I didn't know that, actually, so I'm also learning along. No.
Okay. Well, I remember connecting to the internet when I was 5. So, I've always had a good connection. And what that means is that I've never had a problem loading a video or anything else onto my device. The truth is, though, that a lot of the world does. The internet speeds vary a fair amount. So if your players are in a place where their ability to load videos or their ability to load interstitials is low because their network is not great, then banners are great. They're a wonderful tool. However, if your players are from a market where the internet is very good and there's no issue loading any advertisements in your game, you really have to ask yourself, what's the value of a banner? Is it really better than another ad type? And the answer from a revenue standpoint is absolutely no. Yeah. The answer from a user experience perspective, usually no. There are some exceptions. But that being said, I'm really proud of what we just recently put into Mass, because we do have a lot of clients from these countries whose players are also, have low latent or high latency internet connections. And that was a major update to include 4 new banner sizes in our SDK, right? Because awesome. even as I say this, it is awesome. Even as I say this, I'm cognizant of the fact that I was spoiled and am spoiled, right, for good internet. And not everywhere in the world has that. So, whether you are planning to use rewarded videos and interstitials, which we have the best in class eCPM in the entire industry, I'm very proud of that. We're really excellent at monetizing both those ad types. Or you really need to use those banners, and because of your players and their location, Mass has you covered. So yeah, it's a tricky thing, and I do really believe that you got to cover all customers. But I also believe when your customers have the ability to use better ads, you should give it to them.
I guess then you would want to just think carefully about when to use what. You wouldn't want to unilaterally say, I'm a banners guy. Or
exactly. Yeah, that's a good way of summarizing it.
Yeah. Be strategic in the way that you use each of these things. Yeah.
Right.
Well, speaking of that, there's another question about frequency. I don't like having a lot of ads in my game because I want to give my players a good experience. Mm-hmm. So what would you recommend?
So that's a really good question, because every player experience is different. But if you've got a game that players are going to come back to for many days in a row, yes, I hear you. And in that case, you want to use something like a rewarded video to find a way to incentivize players to come back. I've seen some interesting games where, you essentially, you play the game for a little bit and then you run into a bit of an obstacle where you can't get any further along. And in the past, it used to be that you had to pay money to get past that obstacle. Now, you can use a rewarded video to get past that obstacle. Right. Case in point, one of our great partners, Keplerians, actually, they're horror games that you can get a hint if you watch a video. And this is good because what it does is it makes the experience better, not
Right.
worse, right? Especially for those players who don't want to spend money on the game. And then after that, they want to come back the next day because they made progress and they can feel themselves moving in the direction of the game that they want to go. So ads can be a huge benefit for player experience if used correctly, rather than just seen as something negative that
Yeah.
disrupts the player experience.
That makes a lot of sense, and it also kind of highlighting the idea that you can have different tracks through the game. I mean, if someone wants to pay to remove all ads, that's definitely, there's a demographic for that. So maybe a certain age bracket, and then with
Right.
more disposable income, and then and then there's another group, a very large group, who are very happy to click on something to get a clue or to get a bonus or something.
Right.
Yeah, why not spend 30 seconds doing that? And those are two tracks for you to make money instead of just having, hey, here's the only way to get there. Two, maybe three.
Right. And Luke, remember what I mentioned to you earlier about getting something out and then experimenting with it and learning from the data? That's exactly the point, right? You don't have to think right away, oh, I need to make these two tracks. But through time and experimentation and having a good solid base for monetization you can build on, you can learn all kinds of things from your players and the data you get that then will help you make those decisions. So absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great advice. Last question is features for Maz in 2022. Do you have any
Mm.
new features coming out? Do you want to
I
highlight any?
do. I do. Okay, so first of all, one of the things that makes me so proud to be the mass product manager is that we have been focusing intensely on making ourselves the easiest tool to use. I already think
Right.
we're the best, but I also think we're very close to being the easiest tool on the market, and soon enough we will be, right? Because it's so important to not have to go through a difficult, long integration process. So that's something that is coming in 2022. We will have a very short integration process. Imagine you can pop the SDK into your game. Right now, we say 15 minutes, and some
Which is
developers
already
make it
pretty short. That's already
pretty short,
short.
pretty
Yeah.
short. But in 2022, it's going to be even shorter, Luke. I expect that in 2022, we might get it down to 8 minutes, which
That's
would be
crazy.
pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's one thing. Super excited about that. Second thing, and I know that some people in the audience probably are wondering about this, even if they haven't said it, is native ads and open ads. So these are two types of ads that Mass has not had. And I think if we're being transparent, it's because we've been very focused on making the ad types we do have work to the very best of their ability. But in 2022, we'll be unlocking native ads for all developers. Once this is said and done, Luke, not only will I be 100% confident that we have all of the best ad types and all of the best monetization potential for developers, but I'll be ready to explore the next big thing, which is the ability to run promotions for your game inside of other people's games and vice versa. And no, I'm not talking about the standard cross promotion model. I'm talking about something entirely new, very exciting, that will allow developers inside of Mass as a community to drive traffic towards each other's games and make, or I think, a really unique monetization experience that no one else out there is doing.
That's
So
a good teaser. That's a great
yeah,
teaser. More on that in 2022.
that's right.
Very exciting. Say no more. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to answer the extra questions, Alex. It's been great. Your expertise is of course always appreciated. Your time is always appreciated. Also, thank you to everyone watching for sticking around. Hopefully today has been insightful. You've got already the gears are turning. You've got some ideas going about what you can do to really take your game and your monetization to the next level. As I said earlier, if you want to do that or you're interested in doing that with a partner like Yoda One, you can check out Maz Managed Ad Services by scanning the QR code, or you can click on the link in the chat. You can register for Maz, and if you do that within 7 days, you can get a free ad design recommendation report, which can give you a lot of insights about when and where to place the ads in your game to make more money. That's on top of having Maz. Of course, you can also reach out to the team if you have any questions, get on a call, get on a chat, all of that as well. Okay, so scan the QR code, click on the link, and I hope to see you in the next one.